Chi skills. Today it's podcast time again, and we're talking about the fire element and how that relates to our purpose, our higher purpose. Yeah. So we want to start with the fire element and why the fire element now.
Yeah, fire element. Well, fire element is related to summer.
Mm-hmm.
And they say it's summer at the moment.
Today it looks a bit like it, but
yeah, it's been a bit of a strange summer. But normally, summertime is the energy of the great yang energy.
Yep.
And so, fire element also stands for this big expanding energy.
Right. Look at nature. Yeah. Look at the heat and the warmth and the sun and yeah.
Exactly. So this is the time to explore this feeling. When you're in this season, it's a great time to explore what this energy also is inside you.
Exactly. So this young energy, this expanding energy is, you could say, relates to our influence in the world, I guess, and our mark on the world, or how we behave in the world, and how that is like, well, becomes sort of a to B thing, right, in your life, and how does that develop? Yeah. So we want to explore that today a bit,
And I think what's a great thing. So every element in the traditional Chinese medicine, we work with the 5 elements, and the fire element has, or all elements have a theme, but this fire element has the theme purpose. What's your purpose in life? So this is really a time to explore the question, why am I here? It's the element that is about the big questions.
Yeah, this is certainly a big question, right?
Why am I here on this earth? What am I supposed to do here? So and then wow, that's such an.
It's maybe the biggest question of all. So. I think it's nice to explore a little bit in this podcast our own path, right? Related to purpose and how that developed.
Yeah.
And that might be inspiring for people.
So how did that go for you?
Well, I think growing up, I sort of knew what I wanted in life. If I just looked at other children around me, there were sort of still looking for these answers. They want to be a fireman or an astronaut, and then later when you come more into high school, that changes, right? Things change. But for me, I knew very young that I wanted to do something with music. So in that stage of my life, it was just music, wanting to become a musician. But mostly at that time, I wanted to become a very good drummer. That's what I was so fascinated with it. I would draw drums on paper, and I would just go to stores, and with my nose against the glass window, right, I would just stare at the drum set, and all these music shows we had on television in those days. They were just so inspiring, because something in me resonated with what was happening there with music.
Oh, wow.
It was a totally different feeling and experience what I would normally experience, right, around me. So I had a pretty clear vision that there was something there for me in that. Yeah.
Wow. And now you're
So I became a musician, and I became a teacher as well, and that developed. But at a certain point, I was looking for something deeper, I think, because I felt that performing music, I would have highs and would have lows, right? And that could differ from one night to the next night. Yeah. And I would be like, wow, what happened, right? Whereas this feeling for and this search for a sort of self-control, I guess, started happening. And control is never really a good word when it comes to playing music, because it's something you're starting to search for, because you feel these differences. You experience these differences between gigs, but control is the enemy of flow. So what I was actually looking for was flow, and I was like, well, I can find this in music, but it became sort of a struggle for me, more and more. And I was like, I need something else. I need something else to explore that part of me. Yeah. And then when I decided to make some changes in my life, that's when Tai Chi came on my path. And then when I started training eventually, which took a little bit longer, but when I started training, it hit me so deep that I already knew that would become my life while I was still a musician, Wow. And of course, being a musician and teacher, I would start somewhere in the afternoon and then end up at night somewhere.
Yeah.
So I had time during the day to train, and I would train hard. I would train hours and hours every day. Yeah. And then it still took 10 years or something to make that definite change, right? To say, okay, no, I'm going to leave this behind, because something didn't want to let go of that picture of being the musician. And but something already knew that I didn't have to. I don't have to let music go per se, but it became a totally different thing. It was like music was guiding me into the direction of this search of flow. So I was like, okay, I can use music for that, but I can also just sit and become present. And so what I had to do, instead of being active, I had to learn to slow everything down and become more quiet.
Yeah.
So that's what I started doing in my life. So you think your purpose is this, but I think one part of your purpose can lead to a next purpose, right? And it's like a constant thing underneath it or something. That's
and it's interesting because what you see, I have the same experience, that actually you're kind of in childhood, it already is there, but you don't really recognize it. It's just the things that come natural to you.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I was a child that was always outside. I was always looking at all the plants, all the flowers, and all the bees. And so, and I could sit there for hours just outside staring at what was happening around me.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. But when I went to school and when studying, that was not a career. I mean, I would not be like, oh, that's something. And I was very good in it was easy for me to learn, so I did great at school. So there was this path that was laid or that was paved before me by society, really, kind of.
Yeah.
Who said, oh, you can study well, this is like you study, you go into your first job, etc., etc.
Yeah, you make a career and things like that. Yeah. Right. That's sort of laid out for you, right? Once you enter school, even when you're in first grade or whatever, it's already about that path.
And
right?
And it was also very much cheered on by my father, who was kind of from that scarcity mindset. You need a good job because you need to have you need money to live, and which is true, but in what way you earn your money can be different.
But I guess it was also his way of he understood that was a way of him being able to care for you, right? I mean that was him showing his deepest love for you, because that's what he knew, right? If she gets a good education, she does good in school, she will do a good in life, and
so, but what was there from childhood, I kind of lost that touch, that connection, that really deep bond with everything that was growing around me.
And being present with that.
And so for me, when I kind of hit that spot where I said, okay, this is not working for me, I really had to make that connection again. I had to find what was so natural for me when I was a child.
You have to rediscover it, right? But the point of where the change comes is that we're starting to contract and contract more, coming more and more into a part of the brain that's not necessarily about just being present in nature and studying. Not studying, just observing what's there. And when does this contraction become so strong that you're starting to notice it as something like, well, I have to turn this around because I'm not feeling good now, right?
I wasn't feeling at all.
Exactly, yeah.
At a certain point. So I was very inward and turning colder. So literally, really.
Yeah.
And so I needed to change. I needed to
turn that around
and become more on my path.
Yeah.
And unlearn all those conditioned, all the conditioning.
Yeah, I think that's one of the first things. It becomes so bad at a certain point that you have to turn it around, and then it becomes a study of like, okay, what got in the way, right?
Yeah.
So what wasn't there when I was a child?
Yeah.
That's now there, and what came in between?
Yeah.
And start releasing that, right? So
exactly.
Your entry was more the food entry, right?
Yeah, and it was. I think that got me into a space where I was in charge, and it got me back into that place where I had a relationship with plants.
With plants again,
exactly. Because when I was a child, my grandfather had a vegetable garden, and I really loved it. I loved to go there,
like a
and
miracle,
I loved to
right?
grow, and I was so amazed by what a seed could come out of one seed.
Like I think that's still crazy, right?
Tomato plant or
a sunflower or
exactly, and I was just that was fairy tale country for me.
Yeah.
Being in that vegetable garden.
Yeah.
And it still amazes me today. But it was that part when I focused more on food and what I was eating and getting more in touch with, okay, what's the energy around food and how can it help me? And that slowly started my journey again. And it was also influenced by actually Jamie Oliver. He said he was there with me at the time on TV or on saying you should eat the best food you can. And I was like, am I eating the best food I can?
And what is the best food?
And what is the best food? And that really started something as well.
Yeah.
And after that, you kind of, okay, what's the next big thing? What's holding me back? Well, said it before, birth control. That was something, a birth control pill. Pill.
Yeah.
That was really something that was kind of a struggle for me in my body to, it stopped me from feeling. And when you stop feeling, there is nothing there.
No.
So stopping that was just, wow, huge relief. And then there's the next thing. And then there's the next thing. Went back to school. Went back to
studying that, right? What's the effect of foods in the system?
Yeah, but then I did a study that I thought, wow, I really enjoy this kind of studying.
Oh,
it's so much more hands-on. And then herbs, and that opened my whole fairy tale life again. Like, wow, I can study about all these plants and what they're doing and how they grow. And
this 5 element system that really, you brought that into the home, right? And it's such a it's just a miracle that you have something that can explain these changes that are happening and that explain growth and decline and everything in between.
And what was so amazing, especially studying about food, but also about herbs, that all these plants, they show in what element they have their function. And wow. If I start about that, then we don't have time for that. But it got me into my passion.
Yeah.
It was, I felt so much joy around these subjects, and I've finished by now, but every time I came home, I would lead Armand either to the kitchen to start new things, to try new things,
Yeah.
or we went into the garden and I said, "Oh, you have to look at this herb, or you have to."
Or walking the dog, and
Yeah.
these rounds would become longer and longer because
Yeah.
we would be standing still at every plant. He's like, that's that, and that's
Yeah.
that, and that's for this, and why is it growing here? Why is this stuff growing around the soccer fields, or not so far from here? And there's all these plants growing around it that are either helping bruises or
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Is nature like that? Yeah, nature is like that.
And there's
Yeah.
wow, and that got us into this really, really other state, this state of connection with nature again, and
It's amazing. Yeah, so you're going sort of full circle there, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying full circle; it's more like a spiral you're doing, right? So you're being led off. You became distracted, you could say, right?
Yeah.
At a certain point, and then now you come back again, but now you know even more because you have a system to work with.
Yeah.
Very old system. So you're still with your hands in the dirt and green fingers and everything, but you know so much more, and you understand so much more about yourself. So, and that's gonna help, and I think that's the whole clue here is that we recognize these stagnations, and that becomes just I don't know. It's like one recognizing and releasing one stagnation leads to the next one, like peeling an onion, right? It's all these layers that you come across with yourself. So my entry was more of a physical one, I think, right? But for you, and that's what I remembered. There was a point where I was a child, and I didn't say that in the beginning, but music was very important. But there was a time that I thought like I could choose now become like an athlete, a sports person, right, or become a musician, because that part also really intrigued me, right? I liked karate. That's what I did as a kid. I liked squash. I liked basketball. Being active.
Yeah.
I really liked being active. So there was this point. I remember I was shooting a basketball in the back garden. I was thinking like, what am I gonna do, right?
Yeah.
So now you see when that turns around, it's like this physical entry wasn't, and this martial arts entry, Tai Chi thing, wasn't far away from me, right? No. I mean, that was already sort of there.
Yeah.
So when I was watching kung fu movies when I was young, like Bruce Lee or movies like that, Karate Kid, or there were so many good ones in those days. I already recognized there was something deeper underneath there.
Yeah.
And that had to do with, I think, the discipline that you saw. Always saw a transformation in these movies, right? People transform, and there's this wise teacher like Mr. Miyagi saying, no, this, or don't do this, don't do that, or let go.
Wash the car,
and getting into the moment. And I think I already recognized that somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think music and martial arts have a lot in common.
Yeah.
Because it's all about timing. Yeah. It's all about timing and being in the present, in the moment, so timing is such an aspect, and also not only the timing but also the interplay. Yeah. It's like, I recognize, especially from the internal training later, with the sticking to your partner, is like it's the same as just sticking to the soloist that you're accompanying, right? It's the same thing. Yeah. Are you present with this person, or are you locked into your own, And that was the thing I later discovered. At certain points, I would come into control. I wanted to control a situation. Then that becomes small, right? And there were evenings, like gigs, where I would just, be so present with everyone. But I thought that I had to control that somehow, right? I mean, okay, now I had a good gig, so then tomorrow it's going to be a great gig again, right? But I found that, no, controlling that was just led me to the opposite. Yeah.
And that's interesting, because I remember you coming home and writing down what went well and trying to remember for the next time.
Yeah.
And I think most of the time you were looking for physical aspects, like how do I
technically do
hold
this,
my
or
sticks, or
hit the drum.
But at that time and this is years and years ago, you were not thinking about what kind of state am I in.
No, and that's the difference, right?
Yeah.
It's not like, am I in a relaxed state? Am I in a present state?
Yeah.
Sometimes I was, but I didn't have control over that, right?
No. Yeah.
There's the word again. So that I it happened.
Yeah.
And now, when you understand that, it's all about letting go, recognizing your control inside of you, and then, but what controls, right? Is that an insecurity? Of course.
Yeah.
And that's conditioned.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's a big
one. That's teachers, that people around you. I think a lot of people recognize a certain amount of control. They're trying to control something that's not controllable.
Yeah.
Right? And that's leading to this contraction. So if we're talking about purpose, I think every path could lead to recognizing control and step by step recognizing where is this control in my body, in my system, in my thinking, in my feeling, and let that go.
Yeah.
Turn that around.
Yeah. And I think if you don't know, because still sometimes I wonder like, oh, what's my purpose? Because it's so obvious in a way, but it's hard to see. But being on your spiritual path is your purpose.
Exactly.
And so finding out what's standing in between you and joy in life, it's worth trying to find that out and letting go of the things that don't work for you.
Yeah. And so Qigong became the perfect, really the perfect vehicle for that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't skip anything.
No.
Right?
It
goes to it studies the physical body and sees where's contraction there. Turn that around.
Yeah.
So from muscle tension we go to tendons and we open the system, and with all these stretch training that we're doing, throwing exercise, we're throwing tension out of the system and things starts to open. So that's where you start turning contraction around to expansion.
Yeah.
Right? But in such a way that it becomes your normal state, right? My normal state now is one of, you could say, in between, right? It's light and open.
Yeah.
And that helps everything because that influences everything that's above that, right? On the vibrational scale, like your emotions, right? I mean, if you stretch, you feel better on every level after the stretch. So it influences what's above. So, and then we have the energy, we're circulating energy, we're working with energy, releasing energy, building energy. Wow, right? And that has a tremendous effect on your mental body as well. So your mindfulness becomes stronger and stronger and stronger on all these levels, so that a fly could land on me now and I recognize it's like, oh, open, and because you're so aware of stagnation now in the system, is that it immediately releases as well. Yeah. And of course, it's still it's a development. Yeah. I think that never stops, right?
You're always a work in progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I found is that some of these things I was already doing, like with music, I was already teaching because I had probably some way that I could communicate what I've learned so far. I could communicate that to other people. So teaching was something, I guess, was already sort of in the start for me somewhere, right? But I also had to sort of come to terms with that, with myself. Yeah. Because something was not looking down upon that, was more like, no, I want to be there. I want. Instead of like, my grandfather was a teacher. Yeah. And he was teaching English and things like that on school, but he was one of my first teachers, right? So his influence was already great on me. Drawing, he played music, and I used to draw as a kid as well, and later in life, and done painting and things like that. So, but he was a teacher, right? And the way he taught me he was always so patient and love. Kind and everything. Yeah. I got that before I met teachers who weren't like that at all, right? So he sort of already showed me that being a teacher can also be a very, you know, beautiful thing that you can be, you know, and working with people.
Yeah, and it's sometimes also, what kind of image do you get by a word? But how do you want to fulfill this?
Yeah.
And not just seeing, a teacher, and going back to that bad teacher that you have.
Right. And you know, and the funny thing was, like a couple of years ago, I was training with Sifu Mark Rasmus, and we were after the training, we would go somewhere, have a veggie burger or something, right? And we were sitting there, and I remember him saying to me, "Is like he was sitting there, is like, Armand, it's our karma to teach."
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
You know, it's just true.
Yeah.
Right? And you could think of all the other things you wanted to do, but this is it.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel very happy teaching. But it's like someone gives you a sort of a wake up or something. It's like, no, it's our karma to teach. Yeah. And it's good.
And then there is also a lot of release behind that, because you don't have to go for that path being a rock star around the world.
Right.
Or maybe in this position you can still be.
Yeah, but I've been close as well, you know. I've been in so many situations with bands, and I would be in some, you know, record label person's house, right? And then we would talk about things like, we just work hard and make demos, and you know, I'm back to London now, but when I'm back we'll talk some more. And you know, I've been very close in a lot of times to actually going to, you know.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, I'm so glad I didn't.
Yeah.
You know, because I wasn't ready for, you know.
No, and I think you were looking for something in music.
Yeah.
That were not necessarily in that big music career.
No, it had to do with music.
Yeah.
It didn't have to do with a musician's career.
Yeah, and that's two different things.
Totally two different worlds, right? I mean, everything is energy. Music is energy, right? So it did something for me, and it already showed me something about flow, I guess, right? And becoming in the moment, I got in the moment listening to it. Yeah. And that did something with me that led to meditation, to Qigong, to Tai Chi, me teaching that. And that's why music still is such a big part of my life. I still listen to a lot of records, and especially records, right? I love that because that's the more...
Yeah, that gets you in that space that you were actually looking for as a child.
Exactly. And now I understand. It becomes full circle. Like I see with you, it becomes full circle. It's like you start as this child, you know, exploring outside and plants, and now you look at what you're doing now, right? Helping people with that and sharing your knowledge about that.
Absolutely.
So this purpose comes through once you recognize what's in between. I guess that's what it is, right? And just trust that.
Yeah.
Trust that.
See where the expansion is, where you really feel that joy and that
this completeness, right? And look for the signs that you already had when you were young.
Yeah, this inner smile that is like, oh yeah, this is where I want to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting conversation.
Yeah. That's it for today.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Thank you for listening watching and listening if you're on YouTube. And
like and subscribe.
We'll be back for more.
See you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.